Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in Gorilla Sports Off Ice. And boy, oh boy, is this the most Monday feeling Monday maybe ever. I'm Jesse Montano. I'm going to be joined in just a moment by Meghan Angley. Wanted to remind you guys about our great friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. Head to trustedamerican.com. Their salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you lower your interest rate and get a better monthly payment. Go to trustedamerican.com right now to see how much money they can help you start saving right now today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome in Monday afternoon, Gorilla Sports Off Ice. I'm Jesse Montano. She's Meghan Angley. Got Mark behind the glass today. Brought to you by our great friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. And what a last 48 hours it has been for the Colorado Avalanche. Season is over. They lose in an absolutely heartbreaking Game 7. Meghan, I guess just how you doing this morning? It's not as nice of a day out today as it was yesterday. It was a beautiful day out yesterday. It was nice to go for a walk, get out in the sun. But from friends, family, people that I've talked to, if you're an Avs fan, this was a tough weekend for folks.
No, it definitely was. It hit the Angley household, calling parents and just catching up, making Mother's Day plans, which has been good to keep my mind up.
When is that?
Next weekend.
Oh, shit.
Hello. So that's been great to take my mind off of things. And okay, you know how I gave you a hard time about you'll have your nights free thing. There is one thing that I will look forward to having some clarity around my scheduling right now, and that is seeing my parents more. I'm obsessed with them. So that's been helpful.
Yeah. I really am, Megan, just working this job now for as long as I have. A lot of my fandom has completely changed in the way that I view things. And so I really did. I went into that game, we've laughed and stuff like that, but again, just, we're professionals and we work in this space, and it's you win or you lose. I'm not the one winning and losing, whatever. And if they win, awesome. We keep doing this and blah, blah, blah. But hey, if they lose, we still have our job to do. We'll keep doing it throughout the summer, but blah, blah, blah. I didn't have that on my card, for it to go the way that it did.
No.
It was jarring. It was jarring. And, Meghan, I've watched this team for a long time. I genuinely, just objectively speaking, I don't know if there's a more heartbreaking loss. It's not just that they lost. They've lost plenty of Game 7s before, clearly. It was just how it all went down. Look, we have a couple things we're going to get to here real quick off the top, but Megan and I actually just recorded about a 20 or 30-minute segment where we just wanted to kind of get into things without having to follow our rundown, without having to, go here, go there, just kind of have more of a raw, unscripted conversation about what just happened and the series and all of it. So we're going to play that in a second. But a couple quick news notes. Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic are meeting with the media tomorrow at 1:00 Mountain Time. We'll be there bringing you guys everything from there. We'll get you our thoughts afterwards. Normally there'd be a Pucks and Prosecco that would go tomorrow, but we're actually going to slide that to later in the week so that we can unpack, everything from that availability tomorrow. Megan, let me ask you, this to me says Chris McFarland likely here to stay for at least one more year. Do you agree?
I actually don't have as much certainty around what it means.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm still pretty uncertain what tomorrow holds. Not that I'm leaning towards that this could lead to some kind of termination on anyone's part. Just it hasn't offered me any more clarity into what we're going to learn tomorrow.
I find it hard to believe that they'd traipse him out there just to fire him a week later. That would be pretty cruel.
I don't think that's what would happen. I could see it being the announcement of we're mutually parting ways, like with Rob Blake, and the LA Kings, although I don't know that they held any availability with Blake today. If it's something like that, though, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to be clear. I would personally not like to see Chris McFarland terminated. That's my personal stance, informed by how I feel about the job that he's done. And we'll get into that later. But so even with me saying that, like, I would not like to see that happen, I think I might just have anxiety as a person too. I don't know that this has ruled that out from happening.
Yeah. It's never a 0% chance, especially in this business. All kinds of crazy stuff happens. I do just think that'd be pretty wild. Hey, go out there and talk about it, take full accountability for it, and then could you meet me in my office after? That would be pretty wild.
I don't think he would go into it not knowing he's being let go. I think it would be like, we're mutually parting ways. I'm going to address the moves I've made this season and blah, blah, blah. That's what I mean.
All right. That would still be pretty harsh.
That's crazy harsh. What if he wants to? What if he's like, hey,
he likes the pain?
Yeah. Well, and also I want to be a GM on other teams. So I want to address what I've done, what's happened this year. And also I'd like to be a GM elsewhere. So they can also review this information and decide for themselves.
Yeah. To me, I think it says that Chris McFarland is likely safe. I do also think that we will get a vote of confidence in Jared Bednar tomorrow. But I think it is safe to say, this is just me, that for the first time, and I'm with you, Megan, I think getting rid of either of them would ultimately be a mistake. That's just me. We'll unpack that more as the week goes on here, and we do get more clarity tomorrow. But Jared Bednar has one more year on his deal. I would say that after Saturday, his seat is maybe a little warm. And I'd say Chris McFarland's seat is probably pretty toasty. But my guess is that they're both going to be given you get one more shot to go out and prove this. You both have had success. Chris McFarland has had way more success in that Avs front office than he gets credit for. And same with Jared Bednar. I think they're going to be told, you guys get one more shot. If it doesn't go the right way, we're making some changes. But to me, when I saw that Chris McFarland was speaking, that to me signals he will be back for next year.
I know we're not fully diving into it, but the other thing I think too with this, you have one more year, that makes a lot of sense to me too, is how do they handle the off season to recoup some of where they have lost? And so whether that be a killer free agency or, amateur scouting has had their eyes on some college free agents that could really make a difference in the league pretty soon here to come. Those can be ways to replenish something like a prospect pool, which is definitely under scrutiny right now for fair reason. And that can be something that is in a roundabout way addressed in the off season as you hit free agency, and then around the draft too, if they utilize the picks that they do have later in the upcoming draft to recoup more picks, and they have some more late round success. We've seen Taylor McCarr and Nikita Prashepov become intriguing prospects, and Ivan, an undrafted player that have kind of entered, and they're a ways off from helping the Avs tomorrow. But those are the kinds of things that I will be looking for into the offseason that I would want to see. All right, Chris McFarland, what do you have in store for us next?
I'm with you. Let's play this. Like I said, it's a nice portion, of the show, the regular conversation we've had, or we would have. But like we said, we wanted to just have that kind of authentic conversation where we're not having to, let's make sure we hit on this. So here's just kind of, literally, we recorded this right before this, so everything's going to look very, very similar. But here's just kind of our thoughts on what we saw over the weekend. And then when we come back, we'll just kind of finish unpacking the rest of our thoughts, get maybe into a couple specifics if there's something we want to hit on. Any comments or anything like that comes up. So here's our thoughts on what we saw this weekend. Game 7, Avs losing to the Stars, and really just kind of across the entire series, Megan. I was telling everyone upstairs. Like when I got here, we were all talking about it. And like, I've told you before, my family moved here the year before the Avs got here. So like literally I've watched the team my entire life. I've covered them professionally now for like 10 years. I've been in person for more games than I could ever count. I can't think of a more heartbreaking loss than that one. Not like they've lost bummer games before. Like they've lost in Game 7 overtimes and that type of shit. But like to have it happen the way it happened, who it happened with, who it happened against. I like forget the X's and O's and all that stuff. Like I can't think of a more like emotionally heartbreaking loss ever.
I think it manipulated my emotions because of how they were up 2-0 in the third period, that there was a false sense of security, though I'll admit it wasn't as if I felt secure because of how Dallas has played this whole series, but I didn't expect it to unravel as quickly as it did and as disastrously as it did. And I think that's where the high then of having that 2-0 lead up in the third period to losing that game and watching the push in the final seconds, because you feel that they're making a push.
I thought they were going to get
until
one.
the final second. Exactly. Yeah. Jake Onger came up with some incredible saves. There's a Val Nichushkin save in particular where he's going for a chance right at the net front that he just gobbles up. You know, there was no chance on Jake Onger's end that was going in, but you look at the process behind how the Avs were trying to create chances. They were winning every draw in those final seconds or winning back possession quickly. And so it just felt like there wasn't anything more they could have done except go back in time and erase the disaster sequence no one saw coming.
Does that not feel like that's what I was telling someone right after the game? Like we had done our show and all that stuff. We were like, I was back at the room and like packing up, and like I said, that's the most frustrating part that like nobody will want to hear, like nobody wants to talk about. But like they didn't play poorly the whole series. Like they didn't play, and that to me is like what makes it so like tough to even not like, oh, it's tough to talk about, but like I don't know what to say, because like they did so many things right up until they didn't, kind of thing. And like I just like I'm not even still like I asked Jared after, like, how do you even analyze this in a series where you did so many things well? And I still, to this moment right here, 2 days later, like I don't even know how to analyze what happened.
Something that's been sitting in my brain is the fact that Jamie Benn takes 2 dumb penalties. He's the captain of the Dallas Stars, and it doesn't really register in our brains as a power play goal when Nathan MacKinnon comes onto the ice as the extra attacker for the delayed call.
I never saw what it was.
I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
It was all happening so live that, in my game notes, I knew that this power play opportunity was coming. They still had possession. Next thing you know, puck's in the back of the net, and it kind of goes to the back of mine. But it was stupid. It was a dumb penalty on behalf of Jamie Benn, to include the other stupid penalty where he rammed his stick into Val Nichushkin's face. And so I'm thinking to myself, see, that's an interesting display of leadership. This is a captain who's been suspended in past playoff series for the Dallas Stars. It's just so interesting. In contrast, you have Gabriel Landeskog, who is willing to get his hands dirty, but also just really how he leads is so different, right? And so you're feeling kind of good about that, and you're seeing the live reaction of the Dallas fans in that moment. We're cooked, like we've got a captain who takes terrible penalties in key moments, and you just feel that you're right. This was just a few minutes away from being a very different story coming out of this series, that Dallas would be having the everything is on fire, this building is burning down sentiment with how Game 7 was unfolding for them. And honestly, just the length of the series, right? Like there's this notion of the Avs analytically were better, especially 5v5 for at least 5 of 7 of these games. And then the Dallas side of, and they still, didn't come away with the win. And the Dallas side of it is we didn't lead very much in this series, and they were close games decided by overtime. Like you don't feel super great about that either. That it was just this thin line between different narratives that were vastly different on either side of it. So that switch too is where it is so emotionally hard to process.
Well, and the like you said, the thin line, the Chris McFarland part of all of it. I talked to Dave McCarthy yesterday on Sunday Brunch, and like I said, especially at the time, like the Mikko move is highly defensible. It's defensible. when he makes the trade. Like, you get Marty Netchis back, and especially with what the narrative was, and we'll all probably never know for certain. Like, only a couple people will know for sure. But like, okay, you couldn't re-sign him. You get Marty Netchis back, who ended up having almost a completely equivalent points year as Mikko. You got Jack Drury, and then like with everything you did around it, it was like, yeah, Chris MacFarland did an excellent job. But because it doesn't work, it's highly fair to criticize, but like the conversation that I've just seen out there, like about what Chris MacFarland did, I don't necessarily want to say revisionist history, because Mikko Rantanen eliminated you, and it's really easy for that to look like an accident or like a disaster. But like, to your point, your 2 overtimes and then a third period, whatever that was in Game 7, like, you're such thin margins away from that narrative being like, well, he did the right thing. It's clear he did the right thing. And I guess that's what makes it so hard to evaluate for me, is that like, yeah, you were really close, but the player you traded shoved it all back in your face.
And even that was a narrative that drastically changed over the course of the series because inside Dallas,
yep,
he was a little bit quiet to start and not as effective. Their top 6 needed retooling at the start of the series in addition to the Avs.
Yep.
Both were a bit fractured and struggling to create effectively. And so Mikko coming alive is not a surprising switch up in the narrative. I think what's tough is that the Brock Nelson, the Marty Netchis, Jack Drury's a little different in his role in this conversation, but they had good regular season showings. There were things that they did well that instantly demonstrated their fit, and it just didn't translate to the playoffs because Dallas had a say in it. There are things that Brock Nelson did well in the series, especially away from the puck, that didn't translate to production, and it ultimately hurt them. But honestly, that's a story that's true of almost every player on this team outside of Nathan MacKinnon. And so it's hard then to see these peaks and valleys affect both teams at different points in the series, kind of at the worst possible timing, because even Dallas, with Mikko as a new addition at the end of the regular season, he was finding some chemistry with Robertson, but things hadn't fully clicked into place yet. And so it was a high wire act that came together at the right time for Dallas and kind of fell apart for Colorado at the worst possible time. Because I've seen people kind of pick at analysts and fans who liked the Netchis addition because the immediate returns were good.
Right. The
power play, I want to revisit this 1 second. You go back to January for a second, and you look a month back from January. This is where that 20-goal stretch in December into mid-January, all of the goal scoring was coming from the same 5 players, and it was the top of the Avs lineup. They couldn't get any depth scoring, and on the whole, they were low in the league for goals for over that stretch, and so they just weren't putting pucks in the back of the net. This is around the time that Jared Bednar is talking about going into the Four Nations break and digging into his project to help reinfuse the offense for the Avs, and so Mikko Rantanen was not the problem here, but there was a problem. The power play wasn't converting, and so go to January 24th, and there's an instant resurgence in the power play. And again, it's not Mikko Rantanen's fault. It was just the way that the Avs were creating at this time was fractured generally. But that new addition of Marty Netchis really helped to shake them out of a little bit of a lull. And obviously Jack Drury improved the depth scoring contributions too, because they ended up finding something really good in that fourth line. But there were problems that existed at this time alongside the Mikko trade that also kind of made sense. And so any analyst who said, I kind of like Marty Netchis, like he's this additional way that the Avs can gain the zone using speed, it really fits this team well, all of that was still true. I'm not going to go back and change my view on that. That all was true.
Well, and like it all still is true. You know what I mean? Like that, like this. To your point, Mikko Rantanen was never the problem.
No.
But okay, so let's lay out a little bit of because let's say they don't make the Mikko Rantanen trade. odds are they still wind up third in the Central. You know, they make some other tweaks here and there. You know, they would have found a way to be able to bring somebody else in and you know, help. They probably still end up third in the Central. Okay, so let's say you don't get him signed. And now, because part of all this too, Megan, I really do think that there's, and like this is not something that's exclusive to the Avs. It happened with the Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins for a long time. There's several examples in other sports. You know, Tom Brady had a really difficult time beating the Denver Broncos. There's something, and I talked about this before the series started with you. Like, there's something weird about when the Colorado Avalanche get together with the Dallas Stars. The games are weird. The stuff that happens inside of them is weird. The results are fluky. There's like weird runs of goals in either direction. Like no lead is ever safe. And like, this is not exclusive to like what we just watched. Like this is, go back to last year, go back to 2020. Shit, you could go back to fucking 1998 and 1999 or 1999 and 2000. Like there's just weird things that happen. When the last time these two teams went 7, Gabe has the knee cut. You know, how many forwards are you down? You lose both goalies. You got Andrew Hammond in it. You have a rookie Yoel Kiviranta drawing into game 7. So like, it's just weird shit that happens. So like, let's say you lose anyways. Then the conversation is, why didn't Chris McFarland do anything? What, now you might lose Mikko Rantanen for nothing and you didn't even make it out of the first round. Like it was a move that he had to make. And I still think to this day, if Chris McFarland, you know, if it's like, okay, well, you're going to trade him to the Carolina Hurricanes, he would probably still trade him to the Carolina Hurricanes again. There's no world where he thought, okay, well, I'm going to flip him out east. Yeah, we'll have to see him twice a year. And if we ever get to a cup final, yeah, we might have to deal with him, but we're in the cup finals. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, if that's the situation. He didn't know they were going to turn around and flip him to like, what I think you could really make an argument now is maybe the biggest rival in the franchise, in the Avalanche club history at this point. Like you had no way of knowing that was going to happen. And, it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. The only way that it gets better is if you win. And it just is extra shitty that not only was Mikko there when you lost, but
he's the driver of
right.
why you lost.
Right. And it's just like, what do you do? What else could you possibly do? Chris McFarland made all the moves that he was supposed to make. He fixed the goaltending. He got a 2C. He addressed the depth. He addressed the back end. I get the emotional reaction of like that fans have of like, I feel pain and I feel upset and someone needs to be responsible for it. But like I genuinely just as like a genuine, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Not bystander, objective observer. I don't know what else he does.
There's a few things that have also been sitting in my brain since this series finished. And I think one of them is you do have to kind of absorb the weirdness of it, the stick breaking.
Yeah.
And how that really feels like why this fully unraveled, because it leads to the breakaway that Cale has to defend without a stick. And so the way that he gets caught defending leads to a penalty. And now you've got a Cale that hasn't fully learned its lessons. And so I think both of us would sit here and also readily say, this team has work to do. This series revealed vulnerabilities and weaknesses that can be improved upon. But there are also things that process-wise, there wasn't a lot more they could have done in certain respective areas. And so you don't want to get caught up in the emotions of the disappointment of the loss and lose sight of where the Avs were the better team analytically 5 of 7 games. That is still true too. And I mean, even some of the process behind what players like Lehkonen were doing to create that just didn't reward them. You have to absorb that too. And you can still sit there and think critically, well, what wasn't working then? Like, why was Ottinger able to find these pucks with Lehkonen at the net front? And Ottinger just deserves a lot of credit here, honestly, in the series. The other thing I think about is you listen to any national broadcast throughout the course of the year, over the course of this series, and sometimes it feels like there's a Dallas slant. But even to hear DeBoer talk about the Colorado Avalanche as if the Dallas Stars are the underdogs is something I want to draw attention to, because you hear the way that other players and coaches talk about the Avs throughout the year and over the course of these playoffs. The Avs are regarded as a powerhouse. Even still, like, this is viewed as, wow, this felt like a Western Conference final, and this was such a strong team that I think it's easy to look at the loss and just feel the weight of it, but I don't think the rest of the league, the players and the coaches, see the Colorado Avalanche as the burning house, the burning building that it feels like right now. People are looking at the fact that Gabriel Landeskog returned, and they still have Cale Makar with the season that he just put up, and Nathan MacKinnon, and I think Devontae's quietly had an underrated series.
Well, so let me take everything that you're saying here, and this is something that I was telling someone yesterday. Like, take that exact series that the Avs just played and drop them into any other matchup in the first round, East or West, and the Avs probably win in 5 or 6. It's like 6 at the absolute most. And I would bet money on that 10 times out of 10. I just, like I said, this isn't analysis, what I'm about to say. Like, they cannot beat the Dallas Stars. There's a mental block, a hurdle for whatever reason. They just, everything lined up for them to beat them there in Game 7, and they just couldn't do it.
I'm a spiritual person, I'm Catholic, and I do believe in fate and fated things. In hockey, sometimes I think some teams, it's just their year, and it just isn't for others. And there was something about the way this game ended that made me feel it's just not Colorado's year. And I hate that. I hate grappling with that. And I also think it's Dallas's to lose. Like, on one hand, I worry about the physical toll that they've just endured. They also have their demons to slay, so to speak, because Pete DeBoer has his own humps that he has struggled to get across in carrying his teams all the way. And the Dallas Stars have the benefit of the return of Heiskanen and Robertson at some point, but there's the question mark of what is second round Jake Ottinger going to look like.
Well, the whole team, it's the again, like I've watched more Avs Stars series than I can even count off the top of my head, and it's what happens almost every time. They play like the 2012 Canadian Olympic team against the Avs, and then Jake Ottinger turns back into a pumpkin. The offense dries up. They can't score any goals, and they get bounced. And it's like, the hell? Because the frustrating part is, like, it did, like, honestly, when that third period started and Nathan MacKinnon scored that goal, I said, it's the Avs' year. Here we go. Like, they've figured it out. The first 5 minutes of that third period had Game 6 versus Tampa vibes to me. Where they, like, you're like, all right, here comes a big push from Dallas, and the Avs were just on the gas, going north, turning pucks back, like, didn't really give the Stars much. And then it just flipped so quick. And, like, that's the part that, I mean, like I said, I've never seen anything that stunning. I went into that building that night. I was like, 50% chance they lose.
Yeah.
You were giving me a hard time before because I was very all right with it. Just like, you might win, you might lose. Who knows?
I was giving you a hard time for, we might have free nights.
Well, and again.
Because I said it's a coin flip.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, and again, like, that was my whole point of, like, the free nights things. It's like, that's how you got to, counterbalance, like, the
It clearly didn't resonate with me.
Yeah, clearly. but like, it's like, hey, if you, because, I'm a try to glass half full it type of person. It's like, that was the thing.
That felt like you were shattering a glass in my face.
No.
And taking the shards of glass and hitting me with them.
Jeez, oh my gosh. You're going to get me canceled again. But again, like, because now your nights are free. And I'm not saying it's a positive thing, but, like, that's a reality of it. You know what I mean? Like,
First of all, speak for yourself. The Colorado Eagles are playing and the Winnipeg Jets double overtime. That's crazy.
But point being, I was like, yeah, whatever. You win or you lose. Been a great series. It's gonna be a great game tonight. For it to go that way, I was just like, holy shit. That was stunning.
I have thoughts too about the way in which Dallas is a foil to the Avs, the way that they play. And that's sort of the area that I go back to. Okay, there are things that this team needs to work on, and they're hard things to work on, right? It's not like, all right, shot selection, you're going to go and work on that this summer. It's mental fortitude, because the difference in this series to me between Dallas and Colorado is that Dallas thrived in the discomfort. Like both teams were trying to force the other to play outside of their comfort zone, and Dallas thrived in that uncomfortable place, whereas Colorado struggled a little bit. They weren't as adaptable. They weren't as versatile.
Disagree.
I think the power play is proof of concept that it was clear to me where Dallas was keying in on certain things, and the Avs would make changes briefly and then revert back to old things that usually serve them well. And it just seemed to me like they weren't able to work through like stepping outside of their comfort zone, being more creative. Later in the series, in the stronger games, I think they did a good job of this. But I think in the moments where they deviated from that, it cost them in a big way.
See, and the reason I say I disagree is because I felt like Game 7 in particular, and even Game 2, like those were games that were played the way that Dallas likes to play them. And the Avs, I thought, were still the better teams in those games in particular, where it was like, yeah, we'll play heavy, we'll play along the wall, we'll, turn you back in the neutral zone. And even for the power play, like, our buddy Petey, big shout out to Petey, did that great breakdown of where the Avs were beating the Stars in the first two games. And a lot of it was on that like overly aggressive kill that the Stars were, any puck that could be contested, they were contesting it. Anything along out on the point, along the wall, they were pressuring, not giving a lot of time and space. And the Avs were beating them. Like they seemed very comfortable. Like, yeah, cool. You want to play that style? We'll get to the middle on you. We'll snap the puck around. We'll find the open guys. And then, where I do agree with you, like you said, is they do that stuff, and then they're just like, never mind. We don't want to do that anymore. And it's like, you just did it.
That's what I agree.
Why aren't you doing it? You just did it.
We're gonna eventually have a Jared Bednar conversation, and we're going to talk about adjustments. And adjustments were made in this series tactically, and the Avs did execute it some of the time, and it helped them, but it wasn't consistent enough.
Yeah.
And honestly, I go back to this thriving in this place of discomfort too, with respect to Dallas playing with a deficit through a lot of this series. They didn't let that stop them from the push. And I don't know if I'll ever fully believe that their belief didn't waver going into the third period down 2-0. But that's incredible. Like, I'll suspend my disbelief for a second. That's incredible mental fortitude to be in a Game 7 down 2-0 in the third period and still believe that there's a path to winning. That's incredible. And I think I have a little bit of lack of faith in that belief, but also in the Avs, like in the moments where things started to unravel, that was a place of discomfort for them. And they weren't typically put in that place in the series because they were the drivers, they were the leaders. Again, the analytics support this. But when they were put in the place of discomfort, I think they were more fragile than Dallas, though I still think that the Avs are a mentally tough team. I think the Dallas Stars are tougher.
So I don't necessarily disagree with that statement, but do you want to know what I think is the difference? And I'm being 100% serious about this because, again, there's other examples in pro sports. I have an example in my life growing up playing hockey. I don't think on the whole the Dallas Stars are a more mentally tough team than the Avs, but I think the cores of each of these teams, I think the Dallas Stars know that they are in the Avs' heads, and I think the Dallas Stars are in the heads of Nathan McKinnon and Gabe Landeskog and Cale Makar and Devontae. Like, I genuinely do think. I was watching the game last night, and LOL, the same thing ended up happening. But I remarked at one point out loud watching Blues Jets, where I was like, God damn, this clock is moving a lot faster than it did on Saturday. And it just felt like when the Avs were in the lead, no matter what happened, the clock just would not move. And I think when Mikko scored that first one, there was the moment on the bench, because this is just what happens to the Avs against the Dallas Stars. It's just what happens.
I think scar tissue, Jared Bednar talks about it in the playoffs, is really important. And I think about how my other fear, because you talked about the core, right? Dallas being in their head. My other thought was there not enough homegrown scar tissue with some of the new players? Like, has Charlie Coyle not lost with the Avs? Brock Nelson with the Avs, Marty Netchus, Jack Drury, to feel and draw upon the scar tissue of other, exits for Colorado of recent history that have happened with this Colorado Avalanche team. Because I almost wondered, is that kind of part of it? Does it need to happen together for you to sort of feel the weight of that loss collectively? And then the similar thing is there's scar tissue and there's muscle memory. And I wondered if the muscle memory of Dallas has done this to us before outweighed the scar tissue, and there was you feel both of those things in your body in a different way. And I just wondered if the muscle memory of, oh gosh, we've been in this place before, like you're saying, got into the heads of some of the recurring core versus the new guys maybe not having built enough of that homegrown scar tissue with this Avs group. And look, I think the experience of those players is still valuable, so I'm not saying all the newness was the problem. But I just wonder if you have more skin in the game when you've lost with your teammates that you're currently battling with.
Well, yeah, like I said, I just think that it was one of those, when they got the goal, you felt it in the building. It was like, yeah, there's no way they're holding this. And I think everyone on that, I think that the core of the Avs team started gripping the stick a little bit tighter. I think they got a little bit jittery. They started pressing up, and that's infectious. And I think just everybody started feeling that. I mean, you had games within this series where it was like, you should have won. And it got away from you. Like, I just think that it was going so well. The one Mikko Rantanen goal scored. And also, by the way, Megan, and people will get mad when you say stuff like this. I was telling you, that game was not officiated like a Game 7. It's not the reason they lost. But if I'm being real nitpicky, it was definitely a nice little pick play that led to the first Mikko Rantanen goal. And the only reason I bring that up is because when I saw it, I said, ooh, if this isn't Game 7, that's interference. And like 3 minutes later, there were two calls where it's like, whoa, in Game 7, really? Okay. And all those things that I said did lead directly to difference-making moments. And I just wanted to quickly point that out. But like, I really do. Like I said, having 30 years next year, I've been watching the Colorado Avalanche. 30 years. And when Dallas scored that first goal, I said, I've seen this movie way too many times.
And that's where it's tough, right? That's the thing that the Avs have to mentally work through. How to overcome being put in that place of discomfort that's all too familiar and quite painful for them. How do you transmute that into something positive? And the Avs are typically good in that situation, right? Like you look at their regular season numbers for comeback wins, they're usually good in a place of pressure. But this was a little bit different. It's losing a lead and in a way that feels fated to go against you at that point, with sticks breaking, pucks going in off of Sam Girard's skate.
Right.
It's like, oh my, is there magic happening right now?
So thank you for saying that. There was so much talk among people that when the Avs won Game 6, like, oh, well, they didn't really earn it. They got their bounces.
Charlie Coyle put a puck in his own net on the kill in that game.
Well, and
there
Megan,
were weird bounces both sides.
Game 7, the two things you just said. It's 2-0, and Cale Makar finally gets his clean look on the power play right in the slot, wound up for a huge one-timer that could have made it 3-0, could have forced Jake Ottinger to make a save, get a whistle, whatever, and his stick explodes in two. Leads directly to a power play. Mikko Rantanen, beautiful shot, they score. The next one, He fell. Mikko Rantanen's trying to wrap that puck around, and he falls. Sam Girard's doing the right thing, trying to seal the post, and it goes off his foot and in. Like, holy shit. Those are two massive breaks, massive bounces that nobody has talked about. And I think, and we can get back to the show properly whenever. But like, in the same way that I was mentioning, I think the Dallas Stars are fully in their heads. You know what Nate said, like, yeah, they didn't have Heiskanen, they didn't have Robertson, and we still couldn't do it. I think in the same way, when that first one went in, Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Rupe Hintz, I think all those guys started sitting there going, here we go again. This is our moment. This is what we do to these guys. And there's a lack of confidence on one side that stuff starts to run, and like an overwhelming confidence on the other side of, it's the Avs. We're going to beat them. I don't know how or why, but we're going to beat them. It's the Avs. This is what we do. We beat the Avs.
I was listening to Rick Bowness on the broadcast last night for the Jets game, and how he talked about, as a coach, in those moments where you're launching the comeback and it does feel kind of against all odds, the bench gets really into it. And I can see how Dallas has that kind of communication on ice, that in that moment, there's no doubt in my mind that's exactly what's happening. This belief has opened up, in part because it's the Colorado Avalanche, but just generally around the group. And I also think that's hard to contend with, that wave of, we can do this. No, we can really do this, versus the clutching of the sticks on the other side of it with Colorado.
And the here we go again.
Here we go again, right? There's something really galvanizing about, no, we can really do this, guys. There's a chance. Hope is a powerful thing.
And like I said, again, let's just use the last 3 meetings. 2020. I can't even keep track of who all the Avs had lost over the course of that series, but none of them were close comeback. I believe it was 5 skaters and both goalies. The Avs fall behind 3-1. In the series, Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen pop off for 2 games. Anton Hudobin is playing out of his mind. And the Avs force it to 7. They take the lead with under 2 minutes to go. This is it. You did it. You got the lead. You just got to hold the fort for... No, 15 seconds later, Dallas ties it. On a broken play where the puck bounces out in front and Michael Hutchinson doesn't even see it. And then Kivi Ranta completes a hat trick in overtime. It's like, what the hell? Last year, you have the whole Val situation. He's leading the league in goals. Gets suspended for 6 months. Has to leave the series. You end up falling behind 3-1. You make it 3-2. You're in overtime. So you're playing a great game. The building's into it. You're 1 shot away from pushing it back to 7 and putting the Stars on the ropes. And Matt Duchene, who hadn't done shit for 6 games, glides in towards the crease and the puck just squirts out. Right, like, it's just like, it just doesn't matter. Hockey Jesus is like, yeah, the Stars win. The Stars win. When will you guys learn in Colorado? The Stars win.
Look, I know Hockey Jesus is tongue in cheek. I do think there's laws in the universe. Things happen, and they're weird, and they don't make a lot of sense. But it's hockey, and it just, it felt against, like, it felt fated, but not for the benefit of Colorado.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to the show. At Accurate America, they helped bring all of our coverage to you guys this weekend, helped make all of it possible. You never know when and where the hail will hit when the summer storms come. And the last thing you want to do is be caught scrambling when it does. So make sure you call before the storm. Call Accurate America. They'll partner with you on navigating insurance, provide quick, professional, and knowledgeable service with the latest technology and 3D modeling, and their work is guaranteed for as long as you own the home. Don't scramble at the last minute, end up having to call one of those storm chasing roofers that roll into town. Call Accurate America at 303-900-ROOF and give them a call before the storm. Also want to give a big shout out to our presenting sponsor, Trusted American Mortgage. They want to help you lower your interest rate, get a better monthly payment. Go to trustedamerican.com right now today. They're going to help you guys start saving money today. Megan, I don't know if this is a fair question to ask, just kind of off the top. Why didn't it work? There's so much that went into this roster, so much tweaking. They addressed the second line center. They addressed the third line center.
Do we have audio now?
Oh, yep, we do. They addressed the third line center, all of that. And it still doesn't work. Do you have any theories, thoughts, anything like that for why this didn't work? And I don't know if it's an easy thing to answer. You know what I mean? Like I think there's a lot that goes into this.
Well, I kind of talked about it. Look, even though we see that the Avs, especially 5v5, were the stronger team for the most of this series, they didn't get the result, though. That's a problem that needs to be addressed, right? And so I go back to the versatility thing, the adaptability thing. And though I don't disagree that they match Dallas's style, especially in terms of physicality. Look, you won't catch me describing the Avs as soft in this series. I know some people feel that way. I do not feel that way. I think that they match Dallas's physicality. And Dallas was aggressive on the kill, aggressive in their D-zone coverage. And so even the Avs, the way in which they'd like to forecheck, typically they'd be met by lots of bodies in battles just to come up with pucks, right? But Colorado, they had a really good answer for these things. And so that did force them to play the Bednar-style hockey that he wants them to play 82 games out of the year, right? You saw a lot of that from Colorado. But what's tough is the skill portion of it. The Avs are doing a lot of the right things to create. They were putting everything but the kitchen sink on Ottinger, and it wasn't working. And that's where you feel you grant them some allowances, like, well, the intent is definitely right, but also you're not getting the result. So you need to do something different. And it's the something different that left me wanting at the end of it all in this series. And it wasn't, again, we'll get into this more specifically. It wasn't as if the Avs didn't make any changes game by game tactically to sort of counter then some of the way in which Dallas is so aggressive. And there were times where they were able to break free and play their game. But I felt like it wore on them too, being in this constant state of Dallas trying to force them to play their way, even though I think Colorado held up well on the whole. The little moments, though, it added up. And so I think versatility is going to be the thing.
Sorry. I just didn't want you to think I was laughing at you.
Oh, the Brock Nelson being old.
No. It's Nelson's gone. Well, unless he resigns. It's like, yeah, that's kind of how most of life works. It's either this or it's that. So I just didn't want you to think I was laughing at your point.
No, it's okay. It's kind of funny. I just think, whether that's a mental toughness thing, because here's my other observation about the series. In both overtimes, I thought Dallas was the better team in overtime. And I feel that maybe is a bit controversial. But I think Dallas thrived in that environment where, well, one, they had just come back in the game. So it's similar to how we were talking about the energy that they gained in the third period in Game 7. They gained energy, even though Colorado had a man advantage at the start of both overtime periods. Dallas still thrived on this energy of having come back, that I think their chances were just a little bit more dangerous, right? It wasn't as if it wasn't back and forth and Colorado didn't have any of their own, Lehkonen, Esa Lindell in the net. Absolutely, it's front of mind. But it just felt like in overtime, Dallas really came alive. And I take away from that this same sentiment that Dallas really thrived when they were in that place of discomfort. And I don't know if it's just the high of the comeback also that was fueling that, but I think there's something significant about Dallas emerging as the better team in overtime that I want to expand on. Not right now, but generally in the future, because that's what I take away from this series is I think Colorado was constructed better, and I put an asterisk by that because without Heiskanen and Robertson, that's really easy for me to say. I think this would have been more evenly matched if Heiskanen and Robertson were in this series in terms of roster construction. But roster construction, it's hard for me to imagine how the Avs make this lineup stronger. I know we can laugh and say Mikko Rantanen might have helped, but obviously that's not the room we're in. We kind of touched on that in our past segment. But roster construction, it's hard because look, the 2C is a hard position to figure out. I know Brock Nelson didn't really quench our hunger for that position, what we needed to see there. And I understand it. It's hard to feel like Casey Middlestat was not going to carry them through this series. That's the bottom line. And so that's maybe the one area that I'm like, look, they maybe didn't knock it out of the park with this one. But it also wasn't terrible, and it would have been worse if they had done nothing. And so this is a pretty stacked lineup, and Brock Nelson's no scrub, and he did things away from the puck that helped them in this series. It's a roster construction, good. Goaltending, I feel really great about Mackenzie Blackwood.
Yeah.
That was one of my takeaways from this series. And so, look, they're going to have to replenish some things. There's some players who might not still be here past next year. So there's some areas around the lineup that they'll need to look at again. But that's what I learned from this series, and that's why I feel it didn't go according to plan. Is they lacked a little versatility in the tough moments, and it was a tough series. So there were more of those tough moments than I think they would have found in another 7-game series around the league. If it had been a different matchup. So it was a tough first round matchup. That's the other takeaway in all of this.
I'll say this, and then we're going to get to the super chats. And then Megan, you and I will continue to unpack this tomorrow after we hear from Chris McFarland, Joe Sakic. We'll probably take the rest of this week to kind of just because I think there's this much here to get to in this series and in this game. And there's a lot of nuance to it that I think, again, rightfully for fans, as we're seeing in the chat, we're seeing on Twitter, Instagram, things like that. People are upset. People are frustrated. And I think that's completely fair. You and I were talking as our segment was playing about the discomfort thing. And you just mentioned it about overtime. And to me, where I think the reason this didn't work, and hey, maybe people don't like this, people will criticize or whatever. I think, like what I said, I think when these two teams get together, there's a sense of belief on Dallas's side that, it'll all work out. And on the Avs side, we have to do everything perfect to get this to go our way. And I think that there were times where the Avs played in this series not to lose, and Dallas was playing to win the whole time. And I think that to me was where there was the difference when you're talking about those moments of the late power plays, the overtimes, things like that. Dallas was like, I'm sure it'll all work out for us. And as we're Nathan McKinnon and the rest of the Avs who have gone through this before, like, holy shit, we can't make a mistake here. Otherwise it's going to cost us. And I think that mindset worked in favor or against either way.
Yeah. And I phrased it even a little differently because in my mind, Dallas did not know how to lose, and the Avs were playing to win. And so it's the same sentiment, but I think the difference is significant. It's like Dallas physically did not know how to lose. It was just not an option to them. Whereas the Avs are doing everything to win hockey games. That's why the intent, the process, it was really good. They were just met with tons and tons of no's. And in the face of the no, their body didn't know how to be allergic to losing. It's like, but we know how to win. This is how we win. And in the face of the no's, because there was just some execution issues at the start. Some of it was Ottinger playing out of his mind, aggressive coverage. We've talked about it, right? But in the face of the no's, it's like the Avs didn't have another answer for the path through.
I do want to say before we get to these super chats, I've just seen a handful of comments in the chat talking about Chris McFarland. Multiple players in the locker room after Game 7 were highly complimentary of Chris McFarland and what he did for this roster. Yeah, everyone can feel the way they feel about the Mikko stuff, and that's completely fair, especially the way that all ends up coming back on you. Chris McFarland did not trade Mikko Rantanen to the Dallas Stars, and he did a lot of good things to get this roster filled out. Let's get to these super chats here. We got 2 separate $4.99 super chats from one of our loyal watchers, Hurricane Teabag. First $4.99 feels like, there they are. We got the money lights back, green for money. Feels like the revisionist history is the defenders forgetting Dallas didn't have Miro or Robo. How is Colorado faring without Kale and Mac? The first part of that, completely fair. They didn't have two of their top players. I do just have to keep saying, Megan, I've seen this sentiment a couple times. Miro Heiskanen is not equivalent to Cale Makar. Jason Robertson's probably about half the player Nathan McKinnon is. So you take Nate and Cale off the roster, it has a much bigger impact than Jason Robertson and Miro Heiskanen. Just, I have to throw that out there.
I think Miro and Cale are closer in terms of impact.
Yep. Definitely closer.
And Cale's impact in this series is going to be something we talk about all summer long because it wasn't as impactful as we've seen in the past, but I'm not going to suddenly start speaking down on Cale Makar.
His overall impact in the series also was nowhere near as bad as people are talking about.
No, if the Avs were without Cale Makar, this wouldn't have gone 7 games.
No, he didn't score as much as people would like, but he had a large impact on this series, and I think people are conflating those two a bit. Another $4.99 from Hurricane. It's not, quote, someone needs to pay. It's, quote, we can't have a GM that loses 4 out of 5 moves. The roster is bad with little ways to improve. You're going to have to be creative this summer and into next season. I just don't agree with the fact that the roster is bad. I thought they had a really, really good roster, and it's what makes the loss sting so bad. But the last part there that Hurricane brings up, yeah, you're going to have to be creative. Your cupboards are a little bit more bare. You don't have as much in terms of draft stock. You're going to have to be creative, no doubt about it. Last one here, $2 from Marty Party. Where do we go from here? Do we try for Crosby?
I've been thinking about that, like, silly back of my mind thing. Like, all right, Nate, go to Worlds, go talk to Sydney, grease his palms. Is that the expression?
Yeah,
like, convince somebody of doing something? Yeah, bring him over.
We'll see. I think the one thing that I really do think, here's a text here. Fun fact, during the regular season in 3 games, November 19th, Dallas wins, goes 50% on the power play. January 18th, Dallas loses, but goes 50% on the power play. March 16th, Dallas loses and goes 0 for 1 on the power play. Their power play was lethal this year against the Avs. Yeah, hard to argue with that. One thing I know for certain is if it's Chris McFarland, who's still in the driver's seat, he's going to be aggressive. I do not think this is going to be a sit on our hands and let's wait to see how it plays out type of season for the Avs front office. I think if Chris McFarland is still around here, which my guess is he will be, I think it is going to be an aggressive summer from the Colorado Avalanche. Megan, any final thoughts?
I agree, and I look forward to getting more clarity tomorrow and digging into a lot more of this too. Like, I want people to know there's a full spreadsheet of topics. We hear a lot of the discourse that people want us to get to, and it's in here, right? So we'll be breaking down individual performances over the series and the front office personnel conversations, and then the future conversations around the state of the team and the window, which I saw come in as a late comment. We're going to talk about the Avs window.
We are. We'll end it with one last super chat from Vaguely Sober, one of our most frequent super chatters. The Doomers seem to be revising reality. We're going to continue to unpack it all as the week goes on here. Mark back there running the super chat lights, making sure everyone knows it is still a party at the Guerrilla Sports Studios every single day. She's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. Got Mark behind the glass, John behind the glass today. Whole team helping out. Thanks so much, everybody. And we'll talk to you later. Have a great afternoon. See you tomorrow.